Hi, this is Sarah with Lasers and More, and I'm going to talk to you today about how to set up your canvas. So, when you first open the program, you're going to probably see something kind of similar to this. I don't know what the exact default settings are because I've had this on my computer for several years. But what you do is there are icons on the left side and there are icons on the right side. You go to the right hand side icons and select the Open Page Setup panel. And you will see three more icons across the top. First is the Design Area Setup. The second is Options and Grid Settings. And the third is Registration Marks. So let's talk about registration marks first. Registration marks are for people who are using Silhouette Business Edition for silhouette work. And what registration marks do is they give you this hash marked area where the Silhouette machine is going to recognize locations on the page as those specific locations. And it's used for things like sticker cutting. So you do not want to ever have that on. If you see these marks in the corners, you want to come over to the registration marks and turn it off. You will never, ever need these for Glowforge work. Now let's go to the page setup. And you start with number 1 is machine. Leave it to auto. Cameo 3 is fine. It's not going to change anything about this canvas area. Cutting mat, you want to change it to none. The cutting mat is this light gray area, and it says Silhouette in the corner, and it specifies the area in which you can cut. And because the Glowforge is a very different sized area, we just don't put a cutting mat in there. It goes away. Next is media size. It'll probably be set to 12 by 12, and that's okay. But the Glowforge has a 11 by 19 cutting area, and so I go to custom, and then I noticed that constrained media to cutting mat is on. Let's see what happens. Even though we have cutting mat as none, it limits you. So when I type in that I want the width as 19, it makes it so that the maximum width is what their maximum cutting mat width is. And so you need to always turn constrained media to cutting mat off before changing the width and the height. So the width you want to make 19 and the height is 11. You can do 19 and a half, I think, but I have never had success getting that last half inch actually in the Glowforge, so I go with 19. I orient my designs always in the same layout as they're going to be cutting, as if I'm standing in front of the machine, but that is totally up to you. If you're going to be designing something that's tall and it's easier to just design it as something tall and then rotate it later, you are certainly welcome to use it in portrait mode. But I always will have mine set up in landscape mode unless there's something really weird going on. You can also rotate the view so that when you go and use it later, it's going to be in the alternate view. But this isn't something that I've played around with very much. Show print border puts a line around the area in which a normal printer would be able to print. I don't usually leave that on. It's not super helpful unless you're doing something like sublimating your wood ahead of doing other things. Show cut border, that's again for a silhouette sort of application. It puts this red line around the area that the silhouette would need to reserve to not cut on. Again, you don't need this for the Glowforge. So that is the entire page setup. Next is the grid settings. And the grid settings has some kind of neat features. The first is show grid. When you click it, the grid appears or disappears. And we can modify what the grid looks like a little bit later. So let's leave the grid on and let's show you what snap to grid does. So I'm going to just take a square and I'm going to make it a nice thick line so you can see what I'm doing. And here I'm going to try to draw a square, and you can see that I'm trying to draw it in between these grid areas, about halfway between, and it automatically snaps it to the actual grid lines. Now, if I take snap to grid and turn it off, and again try to draw a rectangle in between those grid lines, I am now able to successfully do that. So when you're looking for very precise, very linear activities, that snap to grid can be very useful. I will find myself toggling between having snap to grid on and off during some of my designs. Now, let me move this guy somewhere else. I'm going to leave snap to grids off for the rest of this demonstration. The next is show guides and snap to guides. So again, I will now draw a random shape, this time a circle. And when I go to move it, you will see some teal lines at the very top. And now there's a teal line on the left and now a teal line on the top. And what those teal lines indicate is that my circle is positioned so that it is aligned to the top of the top rectangle and it is aligned to the left side of the left square, or the bottom square. And I can move the circle so that now the teal line is in the center of the circle. That means it is aligned to the center of the square. And when I have snap to guides on, when I let go, it stays nicely positioned right there. If I turn snap to guides off, I am still able to see the guides and let go, and it's right there. But I can also drag it down just a little tiny bit and it won't get popped right back up. Again, let's go back to snap to guides and I'll show you what happens if I try to bring it down just well, this time it's letting me do it, and that is probably because of the tolerance here. And so let's put it at 0.1 inches. And now when I try to have it anything closer than 0.1 inches, it automatically pulls it up. I'm fighting against it and it's pulling it up against those guides. So that is what the guides do. As you just saw, the tolerance is how far off of those guides you need to be before it pulls you in. So I'm going to zoom in with the plus zoom icon and show you that even when you have snap to guides on, you can select the shape and use your up and down arrows and move it however far away you want. It is totally up to you. Enable smart snapping has to do with this tolerance. If you don't want it to have that smart tolerance, then you would click it and it's not going to have those guidelines anymore, even though you even still have snap to guides and show guides selected. The next area is the spacing, and you can either view your work in this isometric view, oops, or you can view it in square. I always use the square spacing. I think it's a personal preference, and it also depends on the types of designs that you're doing. The next is the actual spacing. You can probably see, and let me zoom in once more, that some of these lines are darker than other lines. And those are the main spacing lines. So they're set to 1 inch right now. And that's most obvious when you're zoomed out. You can see that I'm lined up to the 11 mark here, and there's the 12 mark, and those are 1 inch squares. I can change them to 2 inch squares if I want. I can do that either by pressing the up button until I get to 2 inch squares, or I can actually type in this box. So now you can see that the darkest outlines are at 2 inches. Next is divisions. Divisions are the number of areas between each of your spaces. So if your spaces are at 2 inches like mine currently are, and you are set to 4 divisions, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 areas in between each of your main spaces, which means each of these is 1/2 of an inch. You can set it to any number that you want, depending on how you want to divide up your design. And the divisions will change accordingly. If you have even numbers, then you end up getting these more even divisions with a slightly lighter line, but still a more prominent line than the smallest divisions. And you can change your color for the lines to anything that you want. You're given some primary colors as options, but you can also change the hex code if you happen to know it. And then you can also change the secondary line colors to anything that you want. This will not affect anything when you leave the silhouette interface. This is just for your help in making designs. Once you're done, and again, you can turn the grid off altogether and not see it, but I'm going to export this as an SVG, and I'm going to open it in Inkscape just so you can see how other programs are going to see what you've done. So I'm going to save this, save to hard drive, and save as shapes, and make sure you change that format to SVG. That's what you're going to need to upload into Glowforge with. Hit OK. Now I'm going to go over to Inkscape and open the shapes file that I just created. And you can see those grid lines that I had been using are nowhere to be seen. And so your shapes are just your rectangle, your circle, and your almost square. And this is what would show up in your Glowforge as well. And this is how you use the page setup, which is what I refer to in each of the videos as the canvas, because it's the area in which you're creating on each of my videos. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask and put those questions and comments in the comments section. Hit subscribe if you found this video useful, because I will continue creating more videos to help you understand how to use Silhouette Studio for your Glowforge. Thanks and have a great day.